I've lost 15 pounds officially. I mean, your weight loss journey is always a little like, this wavy line that you watch. Everyone's got the app and the scale, and you can see how your weight moves over time. And I know I shared on our Facebook community a couple of weeks ago, I shared like a screenshot of my weight loss, like just plummeting. I mean, you watch the line, it just drops and drops and drops. And yeah, I weighed myself yesterday as part of my weekly weight log for you guys. And I skipped right over a number. And when I looked at where I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm a solid 15 pounds less than what I used to hover at. Mm-hmm. And if you look back to December, I'm like 20 pounds. So I still I'm about halfway to where I want to be. I think I know the range that feels good to me and feels healthy to me. And as you guys have acknowledged, that's a good goal. So I'm about halfway, but it's just reflecting on that. I feel good. I feel different in my clothes. And I'm comfortable. I'm just more comfortable in my skin. I just wish everybody would really examine, where they invest their time and their money, because I think we dance around the issue and we spend our money dancing around the issue. I'm going to buy yogurt. Yogurt's my diet food, right? Like I'm going to buy this, and I'm only going to eat, grilled chicken. And it's like, that's not your problem. It might be your problem, but stop. Just if what the tipping point for me with this was, is being a mom of two. I paused and I asked myself, if my child was struggling with how I feel I'm struggling right now with my weight and with my food and with my, relationship with food, if my child were struggling, would I get help? And I wouldn't hesitate. I would not hesitate. And I said, why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I do this for myself? And I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful that I did. And your community is so great. It's so positive. Everybody is, there's no noise in the Facebook group. It's all good energy. It's when you're feeling up, you can post and people are like, yay. And when you're feeling kind of down, people will support you and say, oh my gosh, I've been there. I know how that feels. Or if you just need to understand how to cook a potato, you can reach out for that too. Wow. Yeah. So I'm thankful. I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for this program, and honestly for the support of my family. My husband has been awesome. And your stories like mine, don't hesitate. Really. It will. I mean, like I said, it's been 2 months, that's like nothing in the grand scheme of things. And I've released 15 pounds. I feel like a new person. I have a whole new level of energy. It's trickling over to all these other areas of my life. Don't hesitate to do it, honestly.
Hello my honeys, this is Emmie. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Emmie. I'm a nutritionist and the creator of the Slim on Starch program, where you work with me as well as a mindset coach and a nutrition coach so that you can lose weight on a starch-based diet. If you're interested in that, go to healthyemmie.org. Also make sure to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell because I upload a new video every Wednesday and Saturday. Today I'm introducing you to my client, Krista. Krista is a mother of two and a wife of 12 years, and she came to me because she wanted to release 30 pounds, but also release a relationship with food that wasn't serving her. She, as she talks about openly in this interview, was struggling with and is still working through a relationship with food that had too much reliance on food for emotional reasons, getting some comfort out of food, some stress release out of food, and she wanted to relieve herself of that and also release the weight, the physical weight that would come from freeing herself from from that habit. We've been working together for about 10 weeks so far. She's completed her 8 weeks in the Slim on Starch program and is already halfway to her goal. She's already released about 15 pounds out of her 30-pound goal and has come leaps and bounds in her relationship with food. So you can see how she's going on her journey so far, and she has agreed to do another check-in at the end of our work together through the master's program. Let's hop into this interview with Krista.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I can't believe it's only been 9 weeks. Like, I feel I feel so different. Like, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, there's stuff I'm still working on, obviously, but I'm in such a different place, basically 2 months after I started. Um, I don't know how to describe it. I mean, it's so nice to have food not preoccupy my brain, and I'm seeing it spill over into so many other areas of my life. Like, we went to a cookout last weekend for Mother's Day with family, and it wasn't about the food, and it wasn't about like looking at that cupcake on the counter and just being like, okay, do I eat it? Do I not eat it? How am I going to feel after I eat it? It was so nice to just be present and enjoying time with family. I went out to dinner with a couple of my girlfriends the Friday before, and again, it was like, I had looked at the menu ahead of time. I knew what I wanted to eat, and it wasn't about the food. It was about enjoying their company and feeling comfortable in my own skin, feeling confident in in how I felt about myself and why I was there. I just think I didn't realize how preoccupied I was with, when I was going to eat, what I was going to eat, overthinking what I was eating. So I would say, I've just seen improvements in my relationships. I've seen improvements in my work, the quality of my work, the quality of my sleep. It's just amazing when you really address that one area of your life that you've really struggled with, and you've kind of danced around it, and you've tried things here or there, but when you really invest in and you really spend the time to get at the root of what's holding you back, it's incredibly freeing and empowering, and I feel awesome, and I want to tell everybody about it. So
What's so telling, Krista, is when we got on this Zoom this morning, the first thing that you mentioned was your sister having a baby.
yes.
The first thing was like nothing food related. It was all,
No.
and our conversation before this interview was about primary foods. It was about your
Right.
kids, the party you're going to, your new nephew. And then
Right.
there was some talk about food, but it was secondary to all of these other things that make
Yeah.
life so full and worth living.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So take us all the way back. Where do you want to start with your story?
So, I mean, I think it goes way back. Honestly, when I hit puberty, my body was changing, and I was someone who it's always been very thin and lean, and I was an athlete for many years, but my body was, when it started to change, I started to feel preoccupied with how I was changing, and all the messaging we get about food, and it's from the media, it's from our friends, it's from our family, and I'd say, going back that far, I felt that need to control and maintain that figure that I always got compliments on when I was in my early teens. And the truth was, my body was going to change. And so I would say, that's when it all started for me. So that was like 30 years ago, which is wild to me. And I don't anticipate that story being incredibly different from a lot of women, right? Um, what became really interesting to me and how I ended up here is about 5 years ago, a really good friend of mine, a nurse practitioner, introduced me to all of the incredible research and work being done around reversing disease with a plant-based diet. And it just opened my eyes to, wow, like you can't ignore this. It is not only sustainable, it's this way of eating is reversing disease for people. It's getting at the root cause of a lot of the challenges in our healthcare system and in people's lives. And I couldn't ignore that. I couldn't. And working for a, Fortune 5 healthcare company, it was even more apparent to me. I'm trying to do things in my day-to-day work that really reinvent healthcare for this country. And it just, this way of eating was really in alignment with that, to me, what feels like real purpose to me. So I started that journey about 5 years ago, I cut out meat. I really struggled to cut out dairy. It's hard to avoid dairy, but I really tried. I got better at it. But what's interesting is I gained about 20 pounds over the course of 5 years. And I was getting really frustrated. I was like, gosh, I'm eating like mostly plant foods. I was really frustrated. I felt, kind of out of control, and I couldn't get to the root of it. Also around that time, I went through some, transitions in my career. My kids were, I had a toddler, and, my daughter was going into kindergarten, and all during that time period. And that was really stressful. And I turned to food to cope with those things. Food felt good to me. And a little alcohol felt good to me too. I didn't have a drinking problem, but it was a gray area for me. I felt like I probably was consuming more alcohol than I should. And then when you drink, when you're drinking wine on a Tuesday night, snacks sound pretty good. So that equation, those behaviors incrementally over time, really contributed to that weight gain. So back in January, after a year of the pandemic, I mean, we were all affected by that. And after, I should probably say like 9 months in the middle of a pandemic, I had the week between Christmas and New Year's off. And I just really dug deep. And I had worked with a life coach last fall. And I looked at what I wanted 2021 to be and decided it was the year I was going to get rid of the extra weight. I not only had I gained about 20 pounds over 5 years, when I started gaining, I was probably 10 pounds more. So we were looking at like 30 pounds that really should come off to be healthy, to be in a healthy range. So I set a goal to lose 30 pounds in 2021. I gave up drinking altogether. I stopped drinking. Honestly, I don't even remember what day was my last drink. I think it was Christmas Eve, to be honest with you. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to remove that from the equation. It's contributing to things that are not in alignment with my goals, and I'm just going to let it go. I'm letting it go for the year. That's what I said. For 2021, I'm not going to drink. So I haven't had a drink since probably at least Christmas Eve of 2020. And so earlier this year, I had stopped drinking. I did see a little bit of a drop in my weight. I lost about 5 pounds. But I was still stuck. And I was following, a lot of the YouTube channels that a lot of people follow who follow plant-based diets and Starch Solution. You were one of them, and among probably 4 or 5 others on Instagram and YouTube that I would watch and take little nuggets away from. And then in March, I just said, okay, the first 3 months of the year are over. I looked at my goals and I'm like, I'm not making a dent here. And this is my one. This is the one. This is the one I circled. This is the one I'm going to go after. And if this is something that's been, my body image, my weight issues, relationships with food, if this is the one thing that I've been trying to solve for truly for about, let's say 30 years. How can I not get more serious about this? So I happened to hear actually one of your Slim on Starchers has her own YouTube channel as well. And I've been following her and I heard her mention that she's working with you. And that was when I went to your website. And at the same time, I was actually talking to someone else too, who has a program. And I went to your website, I applied to talk to you. And that was when it became so clear to me that the type of support that you were prepared to offer was what I needed. It was a balance of, well, not only was it an alignment with my goals to be fully plant-based, it it supported not just the nutrition, but equally the mindset and the relationship with food. And the value, before we even talked, the value for what I would get for my money it really surprised me, honestly. And the way that you engage people who are interested in talking to you, it was so buttoned up that I knew going into this, I was really confident that I would get the support that I need and that I would get the value for what I was investing. I felt like this could really, I didn't doubt that this would work if I invested, not only financially, but my time to do this. So that's how I ended up here.
When you first applied, I remember reading your application and you wrote, I know what to do. I'm well versed on
Yeah.
this diet, but nothing is changing. And like you said, it had gotten to March and you hadn't made a dent in those goals.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
was it that made you realize, I think the missing piece here, it doesn't have to do with knowledge, it has to do with accountability and support. Did you have sort of a realization there?
Definitely. I would say, well, I would say two things. One, I thought I knew what I was doing. I was probably I was probably 80% of the way there. I think it was the 20% that the program helped course correct me that's led to the results that I've experienced. But the accountability was huge. I mean, having two people, two experts, a nutritionist and a licensed mental health, mindset coach dedicated to working with me, in addition to your support, the Facebook community, the education that you were giving us every week and the homework that you were getting. I would say definitely. I mean, I know, like, everything I eat, before I eat anything, I'm really thinking about, like, okay, I'm going to take a picture of this. I'm going to tell, I'm going to tell Beth, like, this is what I'm eating and this is why, and here's if I'm hungry or not. Um, Absolutely, absolutely. And the fact that I can reach out at any time and know that, within 24 hours, pretty much, I'm going to get a thoughtful, response and support and that pushback to really think about what's going on with me and what tweaks I need to make is huge. It's kind of funny now too, my husband, because I mean, I've definitely eaten things that are, not within, the parameters of like our weight loss foods. But, when I do, it's kind of a joke. My husband will say, are you going to take a picture of that? You going to take a picture? And I'm like, yes, I'm going to. And I just, yeah, the accountability is huge. I mean, you go to eat something, you're like, it just stops you. It stops you. And you really have to ask yourself, like, why am I eating this? And then you say, you know what, I'm hungry. Or you know what, I'm going to eat this food. I'm not there. This is where I need help. Like, I know I'm eating this for the wrong reasons. I'm going to take a picture of it and we're going to have a conversation about it. And I've made huge strides. I mean, like, I used to snack on nonsense processed foods on a daily basis, sometimes more than once a day. Like in the afternoons, right? We've been talking about this, like in the afternoons after lunch, wrapping up my work day. And then, sometimes after dinner, watching TV or, my husband's putting the kids to bed and I just start snacking. And it's, I mean, I, I don't, in 9 weeks, I've only had like a handful of those episodes, like a handful. And it's something I used to do once or twice a day.
I'm
So,
so happy that you just said that, Krista, because when I read your first mindset journal, one of the things you
mhm.
wrote in your first mindset journal was, I'm starting to notice the
Yeah.
difference between actually being hungry and then eating when I'm not actually hungry. And that is so big because this is a transition and you have to go through the different stages. It's not that after 9 weeks or after 10 weeks, 11 weeks, 12 weeks, that you are completely free, done, never doing that again. We're making a transition here. So
Yeah.
week one of the program, you said, I'm starting to notice. That is
Yeah.
so important. And people, I don't care how long people stay in that noticing stage for, so long as you're committed to making the transition to the next stage, which is what you're in right now.
Right.
That stage of, okay, it's still happening every so often, but it's
Right.
happening a lot less than it was before. And it'll start to trickle away and trickle away. And
Right.
how did you're very kind to yourself in this sense. And most people, they get frustrated and then they just swing the pendulum back and they're like, this is too hard. I can't eliminate the behavior at all. So I'm not even going to try. But you are being very kind to yourself. You're being very patient with yourself and understanding that this is a transition. That's a pretty remarkable mindset.
Thank you. I just recognize, like, I've done a lot of different programs over the years. And like, I've done Weight Watchers, I've done Beachbody programs, and those do work for other people. What what seems so obvious to me is what you just said, right? I'm becoming aware of my hunger and fullness. What an obvious statement. We're human, yet
Mhm.
we have removed this biological response that we have that keeps us alive. We've removed that from the equation somewhere in this diet culture. And it was almost funny to me that first week becoming so aware of that. And I remember saying to my husband and a friend, I was like, it's so obvious.
Mhm.
Like it's it is almost comical. And when I reflect on the other programs that I've done, logging and counting and meal planning, measuring what containers I was going to eat and when, never had anything to do with whether or not I was hungry.
Mm.
It was this: if I eat this many containers at this moment, at this time of day, I'm going to lose weight. It never solved for actually examining, like, are you hungry? Are you full? Why are you eating? Like, it never got into that. So that really clicked for me. That was a pretty, I mean, it was early on, but it was pretty pivotal. And I always, I tell friends who ask me about, what I'm doing with you. I always tell them what's so refreshing is that the food is so simple. You can't help but look at the other stuff.
Mm.
You can't. You really can't. You don't have to. I'm not weighing anything. I'm not really measuring anything. I'm following my visual, like, plate builder. I eat a lot of the same things and I'm actually okay with that. I used to say to myself, like, I need more variety. I need more variety. And I've kind of outgrown that. It's not about the food anymore. It's about all the other stuff,
Mm.
and so I would say being, being kind to myself is recognizing it is really, for me, I'm in it for the long haul. Like, I am here to solve this issue. It took me 30 years to get here. Which I know I don't look old enough to be, over 30, but
Don't.
um just tell me that. I'll go with it. Um but it took me 30 years to get here. It's not going to be overnight that I change. It's going to take time, and you need to ask for help. You need to ask for help. And that's why I did this. I said, you know what? I can't figure this out by myself. yes, and conceptually, I kind of feel like I know what I need to do. Um, but it's really not about the food. There's something else going on. It's great that I can eat the foods that are in alignment with my values, um, while I do this other work. The food is I'm obviously like losing weight, and I mean, I was on like cloud nine after week two. I was like down like 6 pounds in the first 2 weeks. And it just like, it's just falling off. Like it's just coming off of me, which is motivating, right? It's motivating. It keeps you focused. It keeps you going. And then you start to level off, the honeymoon phase ends, and that's when that's when the real work began. And it's been great. I mean, it isn't always sunshine and roses, but it's work. And I think if you really want to solve it, get to the root of the issue and get help with that.
While you were chatting, I pulled something up. I'm going to share my screen with you
Okay.
because you were talking about hunger fullness cues. And you said,
Yeah.
what you said was, once you sort of realized, oh my goodness, why have I been neglecting hunger fullness this whole time? This makes so much sense now. And when
Yeah.
you start listening to hunger fullness, it just clicks and you just can't see it any other way. So I pulled up this picture. What do you see here? Do you see an old woman or do you see a little girl?
I see the little girl,
Okay,
but
so
now I see the old woman. Now,
right.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
some people will look at this and they'll say, I see a little girl, and they'll say, what old woman? There's an old woman here. And then there are some people
Yeah.
that say, I see an old woman. There's not a little girl there. This is
Yeah.
the equivalent to listening to your hunger fullness cues or listening to your brain. There's two ways to do this. You can listen to your brain for how many calories, how much you should eat, when you should eat, or you can listen to your body. You're
Right.
the perfect example because you can see both ways and then you can
Yeah.
choose, do I want to see the little girl or do I want to see the old woman? Which one of those is
Yeah.
going to benefit me more? And once you get that, it just
Yeah.
clicks.
The other thing I can't not say is I wish I could remember. It was probably about week 4 or 6. It was somewhere in that 4 to 6 range. In talking, in my mindset journal, and my mindset check-in with Liz. Um, Liz said to me as part of her message that, because we've been talking about these binge patterns that I have when I'm using food to cope, and I just kind of eat and eat and eat. Um, and she said to me, because I was reflecting to her, that I noticed that the amount of times I engaged in that behavior for a coping mechanism was only like 2 or 3 times in the course of a month.
Mm.
And I used to do that sometimes at least once or twice a day. When I told her that was such a win for me, and I realized that, she said something to me that has stuck with me ever since, which is she's worked with people in the past who've had similar issues, probably even more severe than what I deal with, binging and purging type, binging, restricting type patterns. And she told me it is possible to let that go. It's possible. That is not something that'll always follow you around. You can get past it. And I think that has a lot to do with where I feel patient and where I feel comfortable asking for help, because I know it's possible. And kick myself for not like realizing this sooner. I'm 30 years with but I'm here now. And I think, the fact that it's possible, and she's worked with people, who've dealt with similar issues to this for, she said 30 years too. Ironic, she's been doing this for a long time. We're around the same age. We live these funny parallel lives that we always communicate about. Like her kids are around the same age as mine, and she's got the dog. But so anyway, the fact that it's possible gives me so much hope, and gives me that patience. I will tell you, I didn't feel incredibly patient the first couple days because I felt you in the first week in our first little module, you talk about the like the cravings curve. That's what it's called, right? And I remember I was like, day 2 or day 3, like in the afternoon. And I'm like, it's all fresh. I know exactly what I need to do. But man, did I feel that. I was like, I feel like I am hiking right now up this curve. I'm like pacing around my kitchen. I'm like going for a walk. I'm doing all the things you told us to do. I felt it. But then after like day 4 or day 5, I did start to come down. And it became a lot more manageable, but and that was when the weight fell off. And then it's easy to be patient when you see the results that you get very quickly. So.
I remember that mindset check-in from Liz, and I'm so happy that resonated with you, because Liz is so genuine in her work. She would not say something that is not true.
No,
know that is true. And I remember what you wrote was, I feel like I'll never fully, you used the word fully.
Yeah.
And that was like the red flag when I saw that, because you said, I feel like I'll never fully let go of it. It'll
right.
come every so often. But for Liz to say and truly mean, you really can let go of this. I understand the emotion, Krista, that came with writing that, because these, binge patterns, they are so intense. They're overwhelming. It feels like an out of body experience, that it feels like this other entity that just comes and takes over.
Right.
But when Liz said that, and when that resonated with you, that made you realize, oh no, I am in control of this. Krista is in control, as opposed to this binge pattern being just something that overcomes you.
Right. I mean, the other thing too is, I mean, a critical first step in addressing that behavior is eating the right foods. I mean, when you're not eating foods that make your brain light up, like it makes it that much easier. Like you're more level-headed, your body is in a more stable space. And I think, right, one of your sayings, right, is, you crave what you eat. You get all that junk out, and it does force you, it not only do you start to see the results, it makes it easier to overcome those moments when you are looking for a substance to make you feel better.
Right. Because what you actually said after that, in week 5, the week after you'd had that conversation with Liz, was you had noticed that when you would fall back into the pattern of the snacking or the binging, that it wasn't this big catastrophe that it was, and you were able to stop and pick yourself up. And I think part of that is what the actual substance is.
Right. Right. No, I completely agree. And I always knew, once I came out of that feeling of, it's a little like that anxiety or that kind of depressive moment, if I had, some stress at work, and, I had that a few weeks ago, right, where I just was like, oh God, I'm just having these intense feelings where I don't know what to do yet. I probably know I need a primary food. And you said, right, like, you're like, okay, well, let's not just go cold turkey here. Like, eat what you want to eat, but you got to do it with a primary food. Like, let's kind of walk through this mud together. And I think, it's just so nice to know that it's possible. And it's like I said, it took me 30 years to get here. It's not going to change overnight. And I've never, I remember sharing, I remember after that really kind of rough, I had a really rough day at work a couple weeks ago, and that mindset journal, I remember putting in that journal, like, I actually didn't take pictures of some of what I ate because I was embarrassed. And that was not at all because your team made me feel that way. It was that deep rooted, like, am I going to fall off this wagon? And I've invested this in myself. I'm using my family's money, like my money, like I am here. My family is behind me. I don't want to let anyone down. And that was such a low point for me, where I was like, gosh, I've done so well for like 6 or 7 weeks. And now it's like in this mud right now. And I'm turning to these old behaviors. But, once I got through that moment, I went right back to my plate builder meals. I had the food that I needed, and it's simple, right? Like I've got my sweet potatoes, I've got my, all the kinds of veggies that I love now. I got my microwave steamer that like I use several times a day. I just went back to basics. And I feel like I could always pick up where I left off. There was an end. It was never, you never fall off the bus and see it drive away. The bus just kind of, you fall off, but it kind of rides along right next to you and you hop back on. It's so much easier to recover. And again, because you've simplified the food, like it's easy. If the food's overwhelming and the process is overwhelming, you're never going to get at the issues you need to really think about and dig into. And you've got to be really honest. You've got to be willing to peel back the layers and do the work. And honestly, I still have a lot of friends and, women in my life who talk about, the diet that they're on, the weight that they're struggling with, everyone's examining what everyone else is eating and whatever way, high carb, low carb, I'm not eating whatever today or that today. I can't go out. If I go out with them, I'm going to eat this or I'm going to eat that. And it makes me a little sad. Honestly, I want to shake them, and just say, like, first of all, it's not about the food. It's like, stop making it about the food. Like, you're going out with your friends to go out with your friends, like be with your friends, focus on them. If you're hungry, eat something. If you're not, move on and enjoy the company that you're with. I mean, how simple is that? I don't know if you remember, like one of the first plateaus that I reached, it wasn't a plateau, but I had that weight that, I had my weight had kind of dropped really quickly. And then I sort of leveled off, which was still very healthy. I was still averaging like 2 pounds a week, if you average the quick weight loss over time. So it wasn't super panicked, but I was like, okay, I am eating all the right things. But I think it was you. Yeah, it was definitely you put in the chat, because I reached out and I just said, I feel like I'm kind of leveling off. Should I be concerned or the whole thing? And you said, well, here's what a plateau really is. And you challenged me to actually feel hungry before I ate. And that made me nervous, right? Because I was afraid, okay, well, if I get hungry, I'm more likely to indulge in foods that I don't feel as in control. And I remember Liz, I had put that in my mindset, or I put that in the chat, and then I responded in the chat. And then my mindset check-in was a couple days later. I remember Liz commented, she's like, she's like, I would rather, if you're really uncomfortable going there, she's like, I'll work with you. I'll tell Emmie, like, this is not her anxiety, isn't gonna work in this space, but let's try it and see how you like, don't feel like you got to go crazy and try it, but let's try it. And I was fine. I was totally fine. I actually look forward to it now, because when I eat, I feel validated. Like, I am hungry. I'm going to eat. It seems so obvious. But it works. It really does. And it's okay. It's okay to feel a little hungry every now and then.
That, what you just said is a little nugget that I don't think I've talked about much on my channel. And now I want to, because it's such a struggle that people have, is if they do engage in these patterns, they know that one of the triggers is being hungry. So trying to avoid being hungry at all costs. And instead of trusting yourself, I often ask people, are you putting more trust in the food than you're putting in yourself? And people say, well, I guess so. Can you give me some food tricks that I can use instead? I want to break through this plateau, but I don't want to allow myself to get hungry. Give me how can I change my meals? Should I have a salad before my meals? All of these things.
Right. We make it about the food.
Right.
It's not about the food.
You got to build trust with yourself. And AAA, action alleviates anxiety. So if you have all this anxiety about allowing yourself to get hungry, what's the worst that can happen? You eat. That's the worst. That's the absolute worst that could happen, is you eat more than you want to. And then we know that we have some more work to do, but that didn't happen.
Right. No, No, it didn't happen. I mean, the only time I sometimes have like a mini meal is, you know, I'm a mom of two. I work full time. I'm on, now that we're working from home, I have a lot more phone calls than when I was at work in the office. Um, and if I look at my schedule, whether I have to go to bring the kids to practice or, we're going out to dinner, or I've got an afternoon full of calls and it's going to be, hard to get something in. If I'm like, I'm not, I do feel a little bit hungry. I'm probably not as hungry as I would be if, that would prompt me to make myself a full meal. I'll make myself like a mini meal. I'll eat, a small serving of, I love these like rice blends that, these whole grain rice blends that I'm eating with some, cucumber slices and it's super easy to eat. And that will just kind of see that like satiate me, like kind of turn down the volume of that hunger, that little bit of hunger that I'm feeling and hold me over. And then I'm good. And when I am actually hungry again, like then I'll sit down and I'll eat. Like it really is that simple. I think we just live in this culture right now where people are overthinking the food. Like not only do we have thousands of food choices around us, it's, the diet industry is making bank on confusing people. And when we stop making, here's Krista, here's what you should eat. 5 key things that you should be eating. Categories of food with thousands of choices within these categories. I had no idea how many different kinds of potatoes there were. I love them all. They all serve different purposes for me. But when you make it that simple, you just, and it works, and you lose weight, you feel good, you sleep good, and you can focus your energy. You're not focusing your energy on the counting and the categories and the how many of this and how many of that and weighing this and weighing that. Like, who has time for that? No one has time for that. If you are focused on that, you're not doing the real work. You need to stop and ask yourself, is my problem really food? It might be. My first guess for you is that it's actually something else.
Drops the mic, Krista.
Right? It is.
Yes,
It
that
is.
is some truth.
I mean that so sincerely. I know I'm like preaching right now, but
Please do.
I see so many people struggle, and it's like, and eating whole plant foods, when so much of our country is so sick from the food that they're eating. I mean, the top 3 killers of people right now are foodborne illnesses. Like, somebody needs to shake someone and say, 1, you need to examine your relationship with food. 2, you need to take a hard look at the food that you're eating. And everyone said, my first reaction when my friend was like, you really should be vegan. You really should be vegan. My first reaction was, oh my gosh, I have no idea what food to eat.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how much food you can eat? Do you have any idea how affordable it is? Everyone's like, I can't afford that. I can't afford that. It's like, you don't know. You don't know. And I have to say, I love the cleanup. Like when I cook I'm not cooking with oil. Do you know how easy it is to clean a pan that you haven't put oil in? Do you know how nice it is to prepare a meal and not have to wash surfaces every 5 minutes because you put some kind of animal product on it? I'm not worried about that. That's not an issue in our house. So I really knew. I'm self-aware. I knew my issues were not, it wasn't about the food. And I had to find a program that did align food wise with what I believe and what I know from years of research. Thank you, Dr. Esselstyn and Neil Collin, T. Colin Campbell and, Dr. Barnard, thank you to them. I knew that was the right food to eat, but I needed a program where I knew I could get help and feel accountable for working through this stuff that I couldn't figure out on my own with my mindset.
Okay, the secret phrase, if you are still watching, is keep going, because I said to Krista, I would love to have you back on the channel once we're finished with the master's program so we can see how you came with, did you reach your goal? We shall see. So give Krista some motivation and leave a comment that says keep going, and then we'll have her back on the channel once she finishes the master's program. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you, Krista, for doing this awesome interview, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Mwah! Woo!